I know this for a fact. If you're an artist, you've definitely been asked, what is your work about? And if you've ever fumbled through that answer, like almost everyone, or felt like your response didn't quite capture everything, you are not alone. Matter of fact, most people stumble with that, not just artists. I struggle with it for a very long time, and as I grow, I have to keep recrafting the way I introduce myself. Anyway, we don't like to talk about artists as brands, right? But we gotta be real. It's easier to talk about artists who have really clear identifiers. If people can explain your practice in 30 seconds, they're more than likely to advocate for you, write about you, and collect your work. So today, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break down how to do that in 2 different sections. Section 1, why artists need clear identifiers. We will go over both fundamental and visual identifiers. In section 2, we're gonna dig into 3 artists who have done this very, very well. All right, artists, look, please don't leave this video without downloading the artist career checklist at the link below. Be sure to download my artist career checklist at the link in the description. All right, what's up, glorifiers? For those of you who are new here, I'm Moriah, Alise, an art advisor and a curator, and I'm really dedicated to making the art world more accessible to everyone through insights, through conversations, and through discovery. Welcome to Dear Glory. Let's get into it. Now, section 1, why artists need clear identifiers. I want you to think about your favorite artists. If you had to describe their work to someone, what would you say? You probably mentioned something about their visual style, the colors, the techniques, the composition, but you also bring up their personal background, their achievements, themes and messages that kind of thread throughout their work and what their work is really about. Now, the combination of those 2 things, a fundamental identifier and a visual identifier, makes an artist very memorable. And when curators, collectors, or casual viewers can talk about you in a clear, compelling way, it makes your work and even your career a lot easier to follow. If I were to explain an artist by saying, oh, she's an artist who paints large-scale portraits of Black figures, she uses grayscale as a skin tone, who would you think about? You probably immediately think about Amy Sherald, right? That's because she has consistent and recognizable visual style. Now, if I also said her work challenges traditional ideas of Black portraiture and she expands on the representation of Black life beyond struggle narratives, I will recognize that artist a lot easier. Okay, so to make it even easier, we would mention one of her biggest accomplishments. We would say, oh, the artist that painted Michelle Obama, right? So putting these fundamental identifiers with these visual identifiers, she paints skin tone with a grayscale, she painted Obama, and she focuses on portraiture, okay? So let's break down 3 ways you can start defining your own artistic identity. How can you make your work easily recognizable by using fundamental and visual identifiers? Now, this doesn't mean we are dumbing down your work or making it simple. You very much so should stay yourself, but we need to find your core theme. Now, this theme can expand and it can grow. It's malleable, right? But there should definitely be a core. So, section 1, step 1, find your core themes, aka find your fundamental identifiers. First, identify the recurring themes in your work. Ask yourself, what's driving me to create? That's number 1. Number 2, what stories am I telling? Number 3, what emotions or ideas do I keep coming back to? And that's the key word. What emotions or ideas do I keep coming back to? Now I want you to go look at your last 10 pieces. Look at the last 10 pieces you made. Do you see any type of patterns? Hopefully you've been writing about your work, and you can go back and also look at these writings and see if you see patterns. So do you see fundamental patterns? Do you see visual patterns? We're still on fundamental, we'll get to visual later, but do you see any fundamental patterns when you look at your last 10 works? Have you been drawn to certain social issues? Have you been drawn to certain narratives? Have you been drawn to certain things in your life that you're repeating over and over and over in your work? Are you constantly talking about your childhood? Are you constantly talking about your ancestors? What is a constant in your work? So here's a quick example. I want you to look at Kerry James Marshall. His fundamental thread is rewriting Black presence in art history. That's what's tying his entire practice together. Every decision he makes, from subject matter to color palette, reinforces this core theme. His work is about more than representation. It's rooted in reclaiming and redefining Black visibility in art history. Now, that's condensed, right? I mean, because we could talk about Kerry James Marshall for hours at a time and talk about how deep his work goes. But that was a condensed explanation of his work, right? Black presence in art history. That's what's tying his practice together, okay? So again, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and we can dig into folks' work. But when you talk about that core theme, that theme that reinforces his entire practice, we can do that, and we should be able to do it in 30 seconds. So I want you to try this. Write down 3 themes that keep appearing in your work, even if it's unintentional. This is gonna help you clarify your artistic identity. Now let's talk about the visual things, okay? So step 2, develop your visual language, AKA your visual identifiers. I like to say this is like figuring out your visual signature. So I want you to ask yourself, do you have a specific color palette that you keep using, that keeps showing up? Are there symbols or motifs that show up repeatedly? Is there a certain texture, material, or process that makes your work instantly recognizable? I want to give you a few examples for you to consider. Tasha Bala Self, for example, has a clear visual identifier: patchwork, exaggerated body shapes, and stitched fabric textures in her paintings. That's allowing us to instantly recognize her work. Even Julie Meritu, whose visual identifier is layered, dynamic compositions that are blending architecture and blueprints, maps, and gestural marks. It works because Meritu's paintings are a fusion of architectural elements and expressive mark making, creating these chaotic yet structured abstractions. Take one of my favorites, Rashid Johnson, for example, using repeated symbols and repeated materials like shea butter, black soap, and ceramic tiles, raw materials in these grid-based compositions. Now it works because Johnson uses these culturally significant materials to tell stories about identity and history. His works are incorporating this repeated iconography like faces and palms and cage-like structures, making them deeply personal to his practice and extremely recognizable. These repeated choices, they're not random. They help them stand out. Repetition in this context is a major help in defining visual identity and visual language. So I want you to try this. Lay out your past work and look for common visual elements. Write down 2 or 3 things that consistently show up in your art, and I can guarantee you that's going to help you move forward. Now look, we're going to have to call this what it is. Step 3, define your elevator pitch. I know, I really hate the term elevator pitch. I mean, define how you talk about your work. Is that better? Step 3, define how you talk about your work. Because I've been thinking about different things and how elevator pitch is such a boring word. It's such a cubicle word, right? Like, it's such a corporate word. Just think about it as how you talk about your work, okay? Think about it as that moment that's gonna create your first impact on the person that you're talking to, your instant impact, the first thing you have to make an impact. At the end of the day, it's a 30-second hook. It should explain your art practice in the most captivating but also authentic way. If someone asks, what is your work about? You should be able to answer in 30 seconds without using confusing art jargon. And now, if you watch my videos on how art jargon is ruining everybody's life, you already know how I feel about all the words, all the extra words that nobody knew, just all this word vomit. Okay, you know how I feel about it. The words that do nothing for you and they do nothing for no one else. So here's an example. If I'm an artist, instead of saying, through a synthesis of gestural mark making, material hybridity, and semiotic layering, my work interrogates the liminal spaces between personal mythology, post-colonial discourse, and the socio-political constructs of identity. Now, a lot of us, I assume that you guys watching this channel are really intelligent. I'm gonna make the assumption that you guys are really smart and that you understand what words mean when they're put together. So I'm gonna assume that a lot of us here understood that. But I'm also gonna assume that some of us would like, what did she just say? Even if we are smart, even if we have read and are avid readers, right? Like, hearing that, I need to hear it again. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not the smartest cookie in the bunch. I don't know. But I need to hear that again. And if I read it, guess what? I would read it again. And I might have to read it a few times. And that's not always a bad thing. It's just, if we're in the midst of a lot going on, we're at an exhibition, we're networking, do I want to spit word vomit at people for them to understand what my practice is? when there's so many things going on? Or do I want to simplify what my work is about so I can get it out in 30 seconds and everyone's not confused, or they didn't miss a word, so now they don't know what I'm talking about? Instead, I would say something like this. I create bold, layered artworks that blend painting and collage to tell my personal story and the cultural stories around me about identity and belonging. Whew, that just takes away all the stress. It's like, okay, I get that. I understand that. You're using bold, layered artworks that are blend. So, okay, so you paint and you collage. I didn't get that before, right? And there's a difference between those two things. The key is to strike a balance with enough depth to intrigue, but clear enough to connect. You got to ask yourself, which style is going to fit your work better? Some people are going to argue me down. Some people are totally going to argue me down on that. Like, they are going to stick to all the word vomit, all the jargon, all the intellect, because they think it makes them sound and feel more intellectual. But the actual truth is, you don't know who you're talking to, and you don't know what their disconnect is. So you want to find, again, a balance, something that has enough depth, but also is able to connect with anybody that you're explaining your work to. And don't come over here telling me my work ain't for anybody, child. Anyway, try this. Write down a 1-2 sentence description of your work and say it out loud. If it feels unnatural or too vague, refine it until it's clear and compelling. Keep writing them down over time until it's simple enough for folks to understand. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the integrity of your work, okay? Simple enough to understand, but doesn't take away from the integrity of your work. Now, before we get into a bit of a deep dive into 3 artists that have done this very well, I have to let y'all in on my exhibition planning workbook. I created that exhibition planning workbook because I needed it, to keep it real with y'all. I needed a step-by-step guide that told me exactly what to do and when to do it. And if you're anything like me, you probably need that too. This isn't just a bunch of information thrown together, I promise. It takes you from ideation, and I mean figuring out what is my vision for this exhibition, all the way to handling transactions and delivering artwork to collectors. It's not as simple as people think it is. And I wish I had this guide. I wish I had a guide on exactly how to do this. It's not just a bunch of information thrown together. So by the time you finish this workbook, when you start your exhibition to when you get to the end of your exhibition, you have had a roadmap, a complete customized roadmap for your exhibition. There's no second guessing here. There's no overwhelm, just a clear plan to make it happen. Now, I made this because I needed it, and now I'm giving it to you because I feel like everybody should have a roadmap, right? I didn't have it. I want you to have it. So go ahead and grab your copy, and in celebration of Black History Month and my birthday, because my birthday is this month, I want you guys to use BHM20 for 20% off. All right, now let's talk about these 3 artists with these clear identifiers. Section 2, 3 artists with clear identifiers. Okay, so let's really engage with these artists whose work is deeply recognizable. Instead of just listing them, I wanted to break them down. What makes their work identifiable, both fundamentally and visually? So I want to talk about Mark Bradford first. Fundamentally, he's exploring race, economic inequality, and urban landscapes through abstraction and materiality. Okay, that's his fundamental identifier. His visual identifier, he's using layered, scraped, and weathered surfaces, creating and using paper, billboard, and remnants and found materials. Now, why does this work? Mark Bradford's work is instantly recognizable because of his process of layering. And if you've ever seen his work, and I know it's on screen now, he is layering and layering and layering and layering this paper on top of one another. It's something you absolutely have to see in person. And he's peeling back the paper, similar to how urban walls carry history through layers of like old posters and advertisement. You know, when you're walking down downtown or midtown and you see advertisement or old posters on the wall you used to back in the day anyway, and you see how it's peeling. It's almost that same natural process. His use of materials are sourced from the streets, like those posters and like discarded billboards. He's reflecting his engagement with the social and the economic realities of these marginalized communities, and his paintings are often His work is often a resemble of a city grid. Weathered landscapes are topographical maps reinforcing themes of urban life and historical erasure. But if you need to rewind and actually look at what I said his fundamental identifier and his visual identifier was, it's very simple. It's very simple. So let's go on to Faith Ringgold, and may she rest in all the peace in the world. She's storytelling through quilt making and the documentation of Black history. That's fundamental. That's core. Storytelling through quilt making, the documentation of Black history. Okay. Now her visual identifier are narrative quilts featuring painted figures, hand-stitched text, and folk art aesthetics. Okay. Narrative quilts. So we know that we're looking for quilts. She's painting figures. She has hand-stitched text, and everything feels like folk art. It's a folk art aesthetic. Okay. So again, visual identifiers, hand-stitched text, painted figures, folk art aesthetic. That's it. Now it works because her quilts are telling personal stories, are personal, political, and these historical stories. Her compositions feel both intimate and grand at the same time, and they draw viewers into the worlds she's constructing through fabric and paint, and again, this folk art aesthetic. Okay, so take a look and dig deeper into Faith Ringgold and look at how her fundamental and her visual identifiers have shaped her career. Now let's talk about Mickalene Thomas. Her fundamental identifier is power and beauty and Black femininity. Simple. Her visual identifier, rhinestones, vibrant patterns, collage style paintings. Simple. Now it works because Mickalene Thomas has built her work around the glamour and the power of Black women. She incorporates rhinestones and vivid color palettes and collage-like aesthetic. She's reinforcing art history, but also inserting Black women in spaces where they have traditionally been left out. Her work is unapologetically bold, reinforcing themes of beauty, identity, and self-empowerment. So I want to give you guys some homework. I don't usually give you homework. Maybe I'll start giving you guys homework. It's up to you whether you do the homework or not. So now it's your turn. I want you to pick 5 artists you absolutely love and do exactly what we just did. Break down their fundamental and visual identifiers. What themes keep showing up in their work? What visual techniques make them instantly recognizable? Once you've done that, drop at least one artist's name in the comments along with their fundamental and visual identifiers. I want to see what you come up with. I also want to explore artists that maybe I haven't explored yet. This exercise will not only help you develop your own artistic identity, but also train your eye to recognize patterns in others' artworks. Now, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to the Glory Digest, which is my weekly newsletter. I love finding different ways to stay connected with you guys, so please join the newsletter. I dive deep into what's happening in the art world, and every issue I share a Dear Artist, Dear Collector section with insights and advice for navigating the art world. I also share exhibition recommendations that I think are worth checking out, and I also share an artist of the week. I also talk about my thoughts on the current art market sentiment, so you can stay ahead of whatever trends are out there. And last but not least, I always give you guys an option for an approachable artwork under $5,000, and sometimes that pick is under $300. And look, before I forget, I created something really special for us. Now we have 22 members now. Our last video we had like 15, I don't know, but it's growing steady, slowly. But I'm excited because my goal right now, my very first goal, is 50. And I created this just for us, and I was truly inspired by all of you guys. I created the Glory Collective on Patreon because we need community, right? We need a space where artists and collectors and those that are really interested in this space can access everything that they need without gatekeeping. I'm talking about real practical guides, how to write an artist statement, how collectors can define their mission, how to even get started in the art world. There's even a guide to understand art insurance because we all know that that's the thing. But beyond the guides, this is a place for us for conversations about the artists you're excited about, for debates about what's happening in the art world. Y'all be in my DMs showing me new artworks. Let's just bring it all together. Okay, so this is where I break down market insights also on emerging and mid-career artists, so you know exactly what's happening before everyone else does. And if you're in the premium membership, you get a 45-minute consultation. I already have 2 people in that membership, and I'm only doing 11 people. That's all I have time for. So if you want to be a part of that premium membership, go ahead and do that now. You get a 45-minute consultation with me every single month. Now, once we hit 50 members all together across all memberships, we're going to start some monthly live discussions where you can ask questions in real time. When we hit 100 members, we'll do this every single week. So it'll be like FaceTime. We'll have a lot of FaceTime together. We'll have a lot of moments to where we're just talking to one another. It may be a guided conversation, but it's going to be open for you guys to ask whatever questions you need. And 9 times out of 10, we'll only be talking about something that you all voted on we talk about. And it'll be in our membership. So it won't be 1,000 people in there. It'll only be our 100 members doing this, our 50 members doing this every month. And once we get to 100 members, we'll be doing it every week. I want it to be a tight-knit community, one that grows together, learns together, and actually supports one another. So if you're interested and you're an artist or you're a collector or you're just someone who really loves the art world, this is where you belong. I really hope you join us. I'm having so much fun with this. So I hope you guys can come and have fun with me. We're learning together. We're growing together. We're on the road to glory. So remember, it doesn't matter what group you belong to, whether you're an artist, a collector, or just here for the love of art, this channel is your home. So thanks for watching, Dear Glory, and don't forget to subscribe and join me next time for more art world insights, conversations, and discovery. See y'all next time. Peace.